Well, hello there. In this video, we're going to talk about how to get FMOD and Reaper working together so your workflow is a little bit smoother. Now, if you don't know what FMOD is, or middleware, or implementation, or anything like that, don't worry. I'm not actually going to be teaching how to use FMOD or anything like that in this video. This one is a little more intermediate, but on my newsletter, I give out tons of resources on how to learn FMOD, how to learn Wwise, what middleware even is, and all that sort of good stuff. But if you already know the absolute basics of FMOD, and if you've been following up with us in Reaper so far, you're going to be totally fine. So in this video, we're going to talk about how to make sure Reaper and FMOD actually are linked together so that your workflow can go between one and the other a little bit faster, a little bit smoother, and make it so when you're working on hundreds of sounds all at once, you're going to be good. Now, this video is probably going to be the last one in our series as well on Reaper. There will probably be one-offs and stuff later on down the line, but this is probably going to be the last one in our game audio series. So thank you for following me up to this point so far, and let's get into it. So here I am in a blank Reaper project, and I also have a blank FMOD project open. So one thing I want to point out is you want to make sure you have FMOD 2.0 or above. So the version I have here on this recording is 2.0104. Just make sure you have 2.0 or above, and you're going to be able to follow along just fine. So I have a blank Reaper project and a blank FMOD project. We're going to start in FMOD right now. And what I'm going to do is go over to my preferences. So in Windows, I believe the preferences window is under Edit, and on Mac, it's under the FMOD Studio kind of menu icon. So go to Preferences, and on the far right-hand side of this Preferences window, you're going to see a tab called DAW or DAW. So I'm going to click that, and you'll see a kind of area that says Reaper Application Path. So in this Reaper application path section, it might already be set up. There might already be the default location ready to go. But in case it isn't, just hit browse and find wherever Reaper is on your computer, and then tell FMOD to kind of point to that. That way, it'll know where your Reaper kind of install is, and you'll be ready to go and can do everything in this video, and we'll be able to follow along no problem. There are other aspects to this, like a Reaper timeline exploder. We're not going to talk about that in this video. That setup does work, but I personally never use it. So you'll probably want to do your own research on what the Reaper timeline exporter is. Instead, what we're going to do is just talk about how to link your FMOD project to your Reaper project so that your workflow is a little bit smoother. If you do want to export based on timelines, I recommend looking at other videos around because there are good resources on that, but I just never use it, so I'm not going to be teaching it. Okay, now that that's all set up, I'm going to go back to Reaper, and I'm just going to make and export a sound. It doesn't really matter what. The point is I want to show you how these projects kind of link together. So I'm going to drag just a random sound from my library up here. So we have a sound here. I'm going to turn that way down because that's really loud. And it's just a random kind of robotic lifeforms library sound. Great. There's our sound. Fantastic. I'm going to export it using the commands that we covered in previous videos. So make sure you followed up to this point to know what I'm even doing. But I'm going to make a region here for that. I'll just call it like robot sound. That's not good file naming convention at all, but it doesn't matter for this. So I have that region set up. I'm going to go to my region render matrix, set it up to export to master. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up my render window here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set my preset. I'm going to make sure it's set to mono 48 region. So that's all well and good. And what I'm going to do is set my directory. And you can see here we have various choices on what our directory can be and all that sort of good stuff. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to set my directory to this very first one where it says Reaper project / Reaper FMOD demo. And I'm going to type in /bounces. Now you can name this whatever you want, but what I just basically did was create a new folder that all my renders are going to go into. And I always make a new folder. I never put it in the audio folder or anything like that. I always export my renders to a folder called bounces. You can name it whatever you want. But when you type in / and type in a new string here, you're going to create a new folder with that name, which is kind of nice. So basically, it's going to export into a new folder that it'll make called bounces. So I recommend, again, for your final renders, for your final bounces, make a new folder for those instead of making them all live within the audio folder, because then things get really messy otherwise. So I have it set to render based off of the region wildcard. So it's going to call it robot sound. It's going to go to this bounces folder. All well and good. So I'm going to hit render. I'll hit show in Finder, and there it is. There's our singular robot sound all ready to go. But basically what we want to do is make it so within FMOD, everything we export, everything we render shows up within our assets directory automatically. So we don't have to go look for it and then drag it in manually. It'll all live within here automatically. That's the whole point of this kind of linking setup. So what I'm going to do is under assets, this assets tab here, I'm going to keep that open. I'm going to go to where my Reaper project lives. And you'll see I have a bunch of backup files here. Gets a little messy. But my main one is called Reaper FMOD demo.rpp. That's the one that I'm working with. That's the non-backup version. That's the non-undo files, any of that stuff. So I'm going to click this Reaper FMOD demo Reaper project file. This one that just says .rpp. I'm going to drag that in to my assets area of FMOD. So just like that, we now have kind of a link to our Reaper project. It sees our Reaper project. But what we also want to do is tell FMOD where our files in that Reaper project, where our renders, where our final bounces live. And what we need to do is go down to the bottom area here, this rendered assets path area, and click browse, and then find that folder. So it says Reaper FMOD demo, it kind of automatically does that. I'll hit bounces. So now I'll hit open, and now it sees that bounces folder as our rendered assets path, our final assets path. So now you'll see that there's kind of a downward facing kind of open close arrow here next to Reaper FMOD demo.rpp.link. So now you'll see we have a link to this robot sound WAV file, which is really nice. So now if I make a new event, let's just make a new 2D timeline, doesn't really matter what any of this is called. I can just go to assets, without needing to go into Finder or Explorer or anything like that. And just click and drag this robot sound in, and boom. Now I have a new event with this robot sound based off of what I just exported from Reaper. And it'll all kind of list all the way down here. And you can even search using the search function. So if I type in robot, it'll make sure that comes up. But if I type in like fire, nothing will come up because I haven't made any sounds with the word fire in it. So you can search within your folder really quickly and really easily as well. It's really, really nice. And every time, by default, the default setting is that every time you save this project, every time you save your Reaper project and go back to FMOD, it'll refresh all of the files that you have within that bounces folder. You can also change the parameters to be different within your kind of FMOD settings, but that's what I prefer, is just every time you save Reaper, it'll refresh all of these and make sure you get the latest ones. So it makes your workflow a lot faster. It makes things a lot smoother. It makes it so you can quickly drag and drop into all your FMOD events, and make it so that when you're working with hundreds, maybe even thousands of sounds, you don't need to go digging for them in Finder, which, you know, is kind of lame. You can just find them very quickly right here. So that's it for today's video. Very quick, very easy, very straightforward, but it makes our workflow much smoother if you're using FMOD in whatever project that you're working on. So set this up whenever you're using Reaper and FMOD together, especially when you have hundreds, if not thousands of sound effects to work with. So if you like this video, of course, hit like, comment, subscribe, all that sort of stuff. And of course, sign up for my newsletter where I share with you where you can learn FMOD, where you can learn things like Wwise, what middleware even is, and give you advice on how to make an awesome career in the game audio field, if that's what you want. If you want to be a composer, sound designer, implementer, anything like that, I give you advice on how to network, give you 2 free courses that teach you how to find work within the game industry, and much, much more. So sign up for that newsletter in the card up above or in the description down below, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks so much.